was out in Los Angeles, and those of you who are familiar with Los Angeles will know right across in front of the Biltmore Hotel is Pershing Square. And there's usually some left-winger holding forth over there. That's all right. I think it's perfectly all right for them to do that. Kind of like Hyde Park in London. They get up and spout off, and that's okay. You got to have a pop-off valve or the boiler will blow up once in a while. Like Saturday afternoon, here was a fellow talking. He didn't want the American forces used against the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, or anybody else. He said he didn't want any American force used anywhere in the world to stop the worldwide victory of socialism. Well, I was standing beside a man there. He was obviously a laboring man, but he was clean, he was well dressed. He had on his Sunday go-to-meeting suit. He said, I know that fellow. I've known him for years. He said, he's on welfare. Well, I don't. I said, there's nothing wrong being on welfare, except he said, this fella could work. Why, he wouldn't take a job, he said, if they offered it to him on a platter. He said he's a crook, he's a deadbeat, he wouldn't pay his bills if he had the money. He said, I've known him for years. I said, he's a younger man than I am, and he's more able-bodied than I am. But I work 5.5 days every week. He said, this is my afternoon off. I came downtown. And he said, I'm working to pay my taxes, and I help support him. Well, I said, when he gets through talking, why don't you get right up on that same box and you tell these people around here about him. You got him cold, brother. You tell them. He said, oh, no. Oh, he said, I wouldn't want to do that. There's the whole trouble, you see. The people who do the working and the paying are going to have to do more of the talking. We're just going to have to do this. This is the whole problem. I was at the White House on Easter vacation. I wasn't a guest. I was out in front. The reason I was out in front, there was a lot of other people out in front. I was there to see them. I made it a point. College students from all over were down there picketing against the war in Vietnam. Well, I waited until here came a bunch of the bearded brothers. You know, I waited on them. You know, the kids call them the beardies and the weirdies. Well, here they came, a bunch of them, and they'd been going about 3 hours before I got there, so they were glad for an excuse to talk. They were a little tired, and I stopped them and I said, my, you folks must come from wonderful colleges. Why, they said, we don't think they're so hot. Why do you think they're so wonderful? Why, I said, how else could you have gotten so smart so soon? Why, I said, you kids won't believe this, but when I was in college, this is the fact, we were so stupid that we didn't even tell the president of the college how to run the place. You know that? I said to him, isn't that awful? We were so dumb. It just took all of our time just getting our schoolwork and hold the job so we could stay in school. Why, we didn't even have time to pick it. You won't believe that, will you? And I said, now compare that with yourselves. Look at you. You not only tell the presidents and the Board of Regents how to run your colleges, but here you are down here at the White House telling the President of the United States how to run the whole country, and you're doing all of this before you've even learned how to wash yourself. I told him, I said, you're familiar with every four-letter word excepting soap. We're going to have to start standing up and being counted. Some of these matters. We believe in democracy. We believe in equality. I'm thinking about up in Chicago, where in my judgment they have the finest city superintendent of schools in America. I'm thinking about up in Chicago, where probably 80% of the people know what I told you is true, and they're for this man. And they're trying to literally railroad him out of town by a pressure group, a minority group, using extra legal tactics. And that is not democracy. And if you get the kind of freedom or the kind of privilege that you get with a mob, remember what one very fine colored friend of mine told me. He said, I don't want anything that has to be gotten by a mob, because I know there can always be a bigger mob come along later and take it away. This isn't the way you gain it. No, when I was out in California and we got this picture and these things on the city and talking about Bettina. Bettina is Bettina Apathager. She was there who invented going limp when you're arrested. This way it takes more people to carry you out, you see. Incidentally, I think you'd be interested to know who Bettina is. The other day up in New England, they had a little meeting of some left-wing students from several colleges. And I think you'd be interested to know one man made a speech in which he said we're going to form an organization to try to get American soldiers already in Vietnam to desert. Now, to desert on the battlefield is a death sentence. And they're going to try to American soldiers to desert and commit treason. And who's the man that made the speech? Herbert Apathager, Bettina's father, 30 years a communist. Member of the Communist Party of America. Why, this girl isn't some little student who just happened to be there. She's a hardcore communist. And the report that you heard on this thing would never even mention that. We've got to tell people that you can be patriotic and still be sophisticated. We had a man at Rutgers University appear on a nationally televised teach-in. If anybody wants to check the accuracy of this statement, his name is Genovese. Dr. Genovese, Eugene Genovese. He said on the telecast, I am a Marxist and a Leninist. He said, I not only expect the Viet Cong to conquer the American troops in Vietnam, but I welcome their victory. Now, this man calls that the spirit of intellectual inquiry. I call it treason to the United States of America. You see, it defines right here, it defines in the Constitution itself what treason is. And you just need 2 witnesses. He had 1 million. 2 graduates, 2 of the alumni of Rutgers came to me in that meeting in New York the other day, and they started to tell me about this thing, and I said, you don't need to tell me about this guy. I heard him. Well, they said, what do you think we ought to do? Well, I told him, I said, if you had one corpuscle between the 2 of you, just one red one, you'd know what to do. You'd pledge your lives, your fortunes, your sacred honor, if necessary, to getting him out of there. Now, this isn't violating free speech. This isn't violating academic freedom. This man is a member of a 5th column that's dedicated to overthrowing America, that's dedicated to ending free speech and academic freedom. It's nothing at all to do with the freedom of inquiry, intellectual inquiry, or academic freedom. And Rutgers is a state university. Now, what has happened? What's happened? What did they do to him about that? Let me tell you what they did to him. Since he made that speech, he has his salary increased. He's actually had an increase in salary. We got to teach people what's academic freedom and what isn't. I was down at, I made a speech down in Memphis. We had a tremendous meeting there. This was at the Municipal Auditorium. And we had a youth rally, interfaith youth rally. All the young people from all the churches and synagogues in Memphis were there. There were 4,000 or 5,000 of them, and they have a beautiful new building. We had a wonderful time. Mitch Miller was there to direct the choir. Well, I talked to him about this, that you could, it wasn't violating intelligence or sophistication to love your country, stand up for it. You know, when I got through, I swear, Mitch Miller told the reporters that I had attacked the intelligentsia. Well, they came and told me what he said, and I told him I didn't know why Mitch was so worked up about me attacking the intelligentsia, because I belong to it and he doesn't. Take something besides a beard and a goatee to make a philosopher, you know. But you know, when I got home, my office tells me we've had over 200 letters now from that meeting, and they were wonderful letters, and the kids stood up and applauded. It was a wonderful meeting. All of those letters but 5 were favorable. 5 were unfavorable, and it happened they were all from Presbyterians, and I'm a Presbyterian. I didn't make it with some of my fellow Presbyterians down in Memphis. One of them came from a minister, and 2 were from assistant ministers, and 1 from his deacon, 1 was just an ordinary Presbyterian. Well, this minister let me have it with both barrels. He said he didn't think that I know what a Presbyterian is. Well, I wrote him, and I told him a little church over here at Caney, Kansas, where I literally grew up in that church, was founded by my father, and I invited him to investigate that. And Then I gave him some more names, invited him to go clear back to Scotland and investigate back there. My people back there were, well, I said to him, they were ministers and elders and deacons in the Presbyterian church before they'd ever caught your people and put pants on them, boy. And you're telling me what a Presbyterian is. And I told him in that second letter what Mark Twain said one time. Mark said it was after he had spent some time with some of the so-called good people, and he had quotation marks around good, in the community, that he understood better why Christ spent most of his time with the sinners. Well, this man, he wrote me right back, and he said what Mark Twain said was sacrilegious. Well, I had to end this thing some way or other, so I wrote him once more, and I said, if Mark has committed sacrilege, one of us ought to tell him about it. Now, I said, why don't we have this arrangement? If Mark went to heaven, I'll tell him, and if he didn't, you tell him. And that was the end of it. You got to end these things somewhere. Oh, let's be proud of America, and let's be proud of our own people, our own states, our own areas, our own origins, because all of them are good. They've all made their contribution. We have a left-wing professor who had one over at the University of Wichita, which is part of the Kansas University system now. And the Board of Regents fired him, and that's just what they should have done. And as soon as he got fired, he became a martyr, and some pink students over at the University of Kansas at Lawrence invited him over to make a speech. And he made a speech. He got up there and he said, are the people of Kansas afraid that in one semester I can take 18 years of Kansas out of their kids? Well, I called Henry Bubb, who's chairman of the Board of Regents and a very fine man, and I said, who ordained this man to take any of Kansas out of our kids? Did he think we founded the University of the state and maintained it to take Kansas out of the kids? We're trying to perpetuate what's basically good. And that's why we maintain these things. No one has been ordained and no one has a call to do any such thing as that. I was over at the Brown Shoe Company. We're going through a plant. And here was a machine there in the shoe factory, and there's a man standing there working this. And I noticed in the process of working this machine, he'd move his feet. And I looked down at his feet, and they were about halfway through the floor. They were in grooves that he had worn there. And I said to him, I stopped to visit with him, I said, that's kind of a hard way to go through the floor, isn't it, brother? He said, I've gone clear through twice. Well, I said, how long did that take you? He said, 27 years. I said to him, have you been standing right here at this machine for 27 years? He said, that's right. I said, same machine? He said, essentially. It got some replacements and a few improvements, but it's the same machine, same place. He said, you know, it's right here on this machine that I made the money, that I bought the ring that I slipped on my wife's finger the night she agreed to become my wife. Right here. He said, here's where I made the money to pay for a honeymoon trip. Right here at this machine, he said, I made the money that made the down payment on our home. And he said, all through the years, right here, I made the money that paid all the rest of the payments. He said, we own our home now. He said, we've got a daughter through the university and have two wonderful grandchildren. He said, I've got a son now. It's a junior at the university. And he said, this was right after Easter vacation. He said, my boy was home Easter. He said, do you have a minute to talk? I said, yes. He said, I'd like very much to talk to you. He said, my boy's over there. And he said, this year, some left-wing sociology professors got him by the nose. And he said, my boy came home Easter and told me that this machine is an evil thing. Why, he said, son, it was right here that I earned the money that paid the doctor that brought you into this world. Right here. It was right here at this machine, son, that I made the money that all through the years has kept a roof over your head and clothes on your back and food in your mouth. And now you're telling me, are you, that it's evil? He said, that's exactly what I'm telling you. He said, you've been chained to that machine. You're a slave to the establishment and to the system. Why, he said, boy, I thought all the time I was standing here all through the years, year after year after year, making a living for you and myself and the rest of the family. Standing here in front of this machine, making the money to pay my taxes and help support the schools and help support the church. I thought all the time I stood here year after year making good shoes for people to wear on their feet and keep out the cold and the wet. I thought I was doing something worthwhile. I thought all the time I was successful, that my life counted. And now you're telling me, are you, at this late date, that I was wrong about all that? He said, that's what I'm telling you. He said, you have submerged your personality in the machine. You don't have any. He said, you sold out. You sacrificed your whole life. He said, we've got to stop the machines. We've got to do whatever it takes to stop the machines. Even if we have to throw our bodies in front of them or over them, we've got to stop the machines. Now this man said, is that an education that man's given my boy down there? Well, I said, somebody's apparently educated him beyond his intellect. It's too bad that he can't come home and work at the machine a while and you go down there and teach a course in common sense. But I said, we couldn't let you do that because you don't have any degrees. In education, we have sacred cows that we call degrees, and you've got to have so many of those. I said, this fellow that's got your boy by the nose now, he may have been pretty sensible when he started out. He probably just went nuts by degrees. But well, he said, I want to ask you something, and this is very important to me. He said, don't tell me anything you don't really believe. Don't make it optimistic if you don't feel that way. He said, do you think my boy will get over this? Well, I said, all I know about it, of course, is what you've told me. But if I had to bet today, I'd bet that he would. You and your wife put a lot of good stuff into that boy. Don't forget that. The church here, the schools here. And you want to remember this. This left winger that's got your boy right now is not the only member of that faculty down there. There are a lot of fine people down there. And they're making their contribution, and they will. If I had to bet on it, I'd bet that when the smoke clears away, he'll not depart from what all these people that have tried to teach him right. He said, thank you. He said, I needed to hear that, and I needed to hear it today. Oh, let's be proud of our origins. I was so pleased up at Jackson, Michigan, and I do know what time it is. I came here to make you a speech, not to bring you greetings, I'll tell you that, but I do understand that there's some... But we're circling the field, in case you're interested. When I tell people we're circling the field, it doesn't always mean we're going to come in right away, but it means we could come in any time. See, that's very encouraging. But we can see the field and we can see the runway. Up at Jackson, Michigan, they had a celebration the other day for one of their most distinguished sons, probably the most distinguished, James McDivitt, who had been orbiting the Earth, a local boy. They got about 100,000 people up there, but they had 220,000 at the celebration. The whole town came out and everybody brought someone with him. That was an interesting thing to me, because here was a special section for the father of James McDivitt. Now, whom did he have in that section with him? Governor Romney, the mayor of the town? No, not at all. You know who he had in there with him? The other lineman that worked with him down at the power plant. The man with whom he had worked all through the years, you see. James McDivitt was proud of his father, and his father was proud of the men with whom he had worked all these years. Honest men, good men, reliable men, the backbone of the whole democratic system, and he wanted to share with them this magnificent moment in his life. We got to teach this to people. It's got to be in the blood. Young people are okay. They're really basically okay. I get so mad sometimes at these people talking about youth. Everybody said youth. Well, now, we adults realize that there are differences among us, but we say youth, we just put a stamp on the whole bunch all at once, and it's all bad. I know some fellows, when they talk about teenagers, I swear you'd think it was a crime to be 16 years old. And youth are different, too. Just last month, I was at Lexington, Kentucky, and I addressed the National Convention of the Student Council Leaders of America. We had the high school leaders from 47 states. I wish you could have seen them. If you want renewed hope and faith in America, I wish you could have stood up there and looked those kids in the face. I mean, it would inspire a cigar store Indian just to see them. And they want to love their country. They're not sophisticated and hard. They're emotional. They'll respond. They want to love their country. They want to do the right thing. They want to hear the good things about America. And I told them, and I'm saying to you, the other thing we're going to have to perpetuate, we're going to have to make it clear that people need in their lives a meaningful religious experience. Now, I'm not talking to you as a minister. I've never studied any theology. I'm just talking about it as a layman, as an educator. You see, you can learn a code of ethics, and you can learn it forward and backward, and you will know absolutely what is right. But the only thing that'll keep you doing what's right when it's hard going is the emotional drive that comes with a successful religious experience. This is an educational fact. And I said to these young people down at Lexington, look what's ahead of you. 50 years, with any breaks at all, the average one of you, I said to them, will live 50 more years. Now, do you think on that long drag of 50 years, you're not going to have those lonely decisions? We all have those lonely decisions. I call them that because we're doing the right thing, and we know we're doing the right thing, and the people who ought to help us don't do it. And you just have to keep going anyway. You have to keep going up that road. You have to keep going when it doesn't seem like there's any sense to it anymore. Memorizing a code of ethics doesn't give you that kind of power. I said to these kids, do you think you're not going to encounter any problem where you won't need more power than you can get out of your little portable power plant? Do you think that your little personal dynamo is going to generate all the power you're going to need for that 50 years? Why do you depend on it when you can connect with a high line and have unlimited power? All you have to do is reach up and look up and make the connection. Talk about a tiger in your tank. Why don't you take that one? It's there, and it just makes sense. I'll say to you as a salesman, if I didn't believe that, I'd hate to compete with the man who did. He could outpower me every day in the week, and he could outpower me twice on Sunday. We're going to have to perpetuate this. This is the job, the biggest job we've ever had. Well, this is what we're going to do, a few of the things we're going to have to do, unless we are going to be devastated and plundered by the products of our own institutions. So I say to you in closing, go out and sell this next year. Sell your own service with your right hand and sell the whole American system with your left hand. And I'll promise you something on the basis of fact. If you'll do that, I'll promise you, you will sell more insurance with your right hand than you ever sold with both hands before, because you can't separate the picture from the frame. They're all one and the same.